many engaged and passionate environmental groups across Canada, but they are disparate. If the movement united and joined forces in an aligned manner and pooling resources, would it be enough? Is the League Manifesto this umbrella? Well, that is the first question. You want to start on that?
Yeah, no, definitely. Just give us all your money. We'll take the budgets of all the environmental groups in Canada. Yeah, no, that sounds like a very democratic plan. No. No. I think that there is a spectrum of environmental groups. There are groups that are more focused on the climate issue, you know, in its pure sort of climate form, and there are increasing numbers of groups that are making the connection with economic issues, with issues of race and economic system and First Nations rights. I think there should be a spectrum of groups. I think that's legitimate that people have different political tendencies and should be represented in groups where they feel an affinity with the analysis of the group. I think the model that we're looking for is the movement of movements model. And we can certainly come together around specific things. The League Manifesto was a product of that very process, where we had a meeting here in Toronto exactly a year ago. Some of the people in this room were at that meeting. We brought together people from across the country, all different movements, from First Nations movements, trade unions, anti-poverty activists, refugee and immigrant rights movements, and we put together a common set of demands that spoke to the issue, the intersectionality that we all felt. That's simply one example of people across a spectrum of social causes coming together with a climate lens that connects the dots among all of our various struggles. And we've seen the kind of momentum that the League Manifesto has and the resonance that it can have, despite an all-out elite media aerial bombardment to which we were subjected. We have a tremendous amount of momentum on that particular project, but it's only one among many. I think the model is people coming together and smashing their silos. I don't think there's any need to have like one big organization. That frightens me. What if it falls into the wrong hands? We need all of our organizations to come together. I think that's my feeling about it.
Thank you. We have a question to you, but are there things we can learn from other countries about how to impact positive change in Canada? Other countries or other cultures, I think. Let's expand that a little bit. Who on the panel would like to address that?
I didn't quite hear.
Are there things we can learn from other countries or other cultures, I'm adding that, about how to impact positive change in Canada? Social change movements. Gabriel. Okay.
I'm not an expert on that particular subject because my experience in Canada is relatively 4 years, still learning. However, in the US, I'm getting to understand that the system is a little more advanced, a little more better organized. But in South Africa, I think, as far as I understood, that the design and the way they organize, that there's a lot of power in the movement. The members are mobilized to bring about the changes that they desire. But specifically to how exactly the techniques that are being used and how we can use them in Canada, I don't think I'm the expert on that. But what I would love to say is that Canada is a place that prides itself as a place where human rights is guaranteed to all. I don't see the reason why it should be difficult to achieve justice in Canada. In a nutshell, I think that's what I want to
I'd like to respond to that one. I don't think there's anything we need to learn. It's inside of us already. We know what's right. We know through culture, through country, through our teachings that if we don't respect ourselves, we don't respect the land, we won't be here anymore.
I can throw in one sort of thing on top of that, which is when it comes to the solutions side of this, which we didn't get to dive into all that much in this panel discussion, but the solutions to climate change are ready, and they're real, and they're being brought to scale very quickly around the world in a number of places, and the different solutions are very different, and they're being applied in different countries in different ways. So you could spend a little bit of time on that, but you know, electrification of our transportation systems is a good example of, you know, that is coming on very quickly. The transition from coal to cleaner sources like wind and solar, that has happened very quickly. In Canada, the approach has been so far, these are very new and untested things. We should be afraid of them. And you know, I saw that in Ontario when we started building windmills. You know, about 5 years ago, everybody's saying this is new and this is scary. It's like, no, they've been building these for 25, 30 years in other countries. This is really well tested stuff. The solutions are actually very easy to implement, and they're cheaper already than fossil fuels around the world. So I think just one thing to say is you can look around in any one of these cases and find a country or a community that has found a model for implementing the solutions, and it's happening on different scales all over the world. So be optimistic that the solutions are ready.
Also, in the spirit of Anno, it's worth remembering that Canada is really behind other countries when it comes to some of these most basic federal policies. It would be nice to remind the minister that, you know, Obama has already banned new coal leases on federal land. That's just something that he was able to do. In France, the federal government has banned any new fossil fuel leases on federal land. So those are really concrete examples of other countries that are in the space that Canada is on the international stage, who have taken much bolder federal action. You know, the Democratic Party is debating calling for a fracking ban in its platform on the strength of Bernie Sanders and the fact that the platform of the Democratic Party is being written by a kind of a little coalition where some of the Bernie people were allowed in to the platform writing process. So if the Democratic Party of the United States is considering calling for a national ban on fracking, like, what's our excuse? I think that's got to be the message.
Okay, there was a question here about how do we challenge the manufacturing sector to get out of fossil fuels and, you know, make goods in a new way, and how do we get people to buy it locally? So this is our last question for now, because we're going to move into the next part of our program. But if the panelists would like to address any additional ideas you might have on that. And don't mind me, I'm just going to grab my computer while we done.
The question was, how do we get challenge the manufacturing sector to make goods without fossil fuels?
And how do we get people to buy local?
And how do we get people to buy that?
Public ownership.
I think the audience may have more answers than the panel on this one.
I think also that while we have policies and procedures put in place, if we see ourselves separate from the earth, that's already a problem.
That's right.
If we see ourselves separate from the water we drink, those are the biggest things that's problematic with all companies across the board, is that there's no accountability for what is happening on the earth. If we have no earth and no water, there's going to be no policies to be written upon anything.
Oh, sorry.
You have somebody who knows something about this.
I'm president of the Steelworkers Area Council, and we've got a lot of manufacturing. I'm also with the Good Jobs for All coalition, which is racialized groupings and unions and enviros trying to get together to come to grips with this. Well, the thing is, we've established something called the Green Print for Toronto, looking at all our industries and seeing. I mean, CUPW is very involved in this as well. And we're looking at how we can green our industry. We don't own the industries. We're the unions, and that's still a struggle that's going on. But I think these kind of things, and where the new jobs come in from, community benefit, For example, Metrolinx, all of that, we want these are green jobs in the sense they're creating mass transit. We want those jobs to be available for our youth and our communities and try and move our economy into a state where it will be green. We can't do away with manufacturing in an instant, but we can certainly put all the pressure, and many of the unions are trying to do that, to green our economy, green our manufacturing.
My name is Sarah Chartal, and I work with people who are homeless and I live in a working poor community. I actually think we have to do more than answer what Carolyn has set up. In the communities in which I live and work, questions like the misery of TTC, the absolute cost of food, the misery of housing, pushes people right, not to progressive stuff, because we don't tell them, well, like, how are you going to take your kids camping with your car? Or how are you actually going to keep your home from being freezing, because when they built it, there was no insulation? Or how are we going to get food? And I'm really grateful for Avi and the film, because I know that at the Land Trust tonight, there's going to be a film around it. But part of this discussion, and I mean, I think we've seen it now in the US with Trump, is when folks like us don't address, and it's not the unionized workers, it's the working poor. When we don't address how miserable it is to live out in Scarborough and have to take the TTC, and not, it's lousy, it's bad service, it's crowded, it's expensive, and it's slow. People take their cars because it's miserable. And then we, who are saying, well, everybody should be using bicycles or using public transit, it's like we're perceived of as the elite telling people that their life should get more miserable. You know, it's like washing machines. Washing machines are fabulous. Not washing stuff by hand. Been there, done that. Don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
But I think that if this dialogue does not find a way of addressing the real lives of at least the working poor, if not the absolute poor, it will fail.
Thank you. I just want to check in on the bucket. Did it get all the way around?
Didn't get to me.
That bucket. Sorry. Suzanne, maybe she's counting. Who knows? Somewhere. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple of announcements and then we'll be into our next piece of the presentation.